On the bottom of your notes, on the first page, please write these two facts down. These are what you're going to do. First of all, factor the denominators first, not the numerators. That's where some of you missed the questions on the quiz. When you factor the numerator, then you can't combine like terms. We only factor the denominator. And then a reminder from previously, denominators cannot be equal to 0. Write this on your note paper. Okay, problem number 1. These denominators don't factor. So, second, the denominators cannot be equal to 0. So, over here on your paper, x plus 1 cannot equal 0, and 4x plus 5 cannot be equal to 0. Those cannot be equal to 0. So, subtract 1 from both sides, and x cannot be equal to negative 1. Subtract 5 from both sides. Divide by 4. X cannot be equal to negative 5 over 4. So, down here at the bottom of your paper, x cannot be equal to negative 1, and x cannot be equal to negative 5 over 4. We did this before. These are the excluded values. Do you remember talking about excluded values previously? That's what we found here is the excluded values. Okay, now that we know what x is not equal, how are we going to find out what x is equal to? Well, we don't have to find a common denominator. We're going to get rid of the denominators. We're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the first denominator. We're going to multiply by the first denominator, and what's going to happen with that x plus 1s? Did you see those cancel right out? I don't have a denominator anymore. On this side of the equation, I just have the number 3. And over here, I have 9x plus 9. Where did I get 9x plus 9? Distribute the 9, and then we have a 4x plus 5. With your red pencil, multiply both sides by 4x plus 5. What's going to happen to the 4x plus 5? That's going to cancel. And so on this side, I have to distribute the 3. And so I found out after doing some of these easier, excuse me, I said it the wrong way. After doing some of these harder kind of problems, then some of you lost your mind about solving these easier kind of problems. So how do you solve this simple equation? Need to get my x's together. Subtract 9x to zero this part out. Subtract 15 to get my whole numbers together. Divide by 3, and x is equal to negative 2. X is equal to negative 2. The answer is not negative 2. The answer is x equals to negative 2. Don't leave out the x equals. That's part of the answer. Now, this is not the problem that you had, but supposing that you solved some problem and you got down to the bottom and you had an x equals negative 1 here and you solved it out and got x equals negative 1. Can this happen at the same time? Can x not equal negative 1 and equal negative 1 at the same time? Is that possible? So which one is it? Does x equal negative 1 or not equal negative 1? It can't be the same. It can't. Those are contradictions. Can't happen at the same time. So what's the answer? Which one's right? Which one's more important? Because what was rule number 2 that you wrote down on the front of your paper? The denominator cannot equal 0, never, never, never. And that means that if I put this one in, that would make a denominator to equal 0. So if you have a situation, didn't happen on this problem, but it will happen, and if these are contradictory to each other, this one is the one that has to go, and that would make this a no solution type problem. So if what you have here contradicts what you have over there, then it is no solution. That's another reason why we need to figure out these first, because sometimes if we don't figure them out first, we forget to figure them out at all. I am having trouble with my mouse. At this time, we are going to do some problems off of our homework. The first thing you're going to do is figure out the excluded values. The denominators cannot be equal to 0. Then, what do you do next? We want to cancel the denominators. How do we make that happen? Yes, I appreciate somebody saying factor first. You do factor first, but these denominators don't factor. So, they don't factor, so we're just going to cancel them out. I'm going to multiply by a 5 over x, so it's going to cancel out that 5 over x. If I multiply by 5 over x on the left, what do I have to do on the right to keep this equation balanced? Cancel, cancel. 3 equals 10x. Where did I get 10x? Technically, it's not distributing because there's not an addition sign in there. It is 2 times 5 is 10x. Now, I've still got a denominator. What am I going to do to cancel the next denominator? So that I can cancel, cancel. Next, I'm going to distribute the 3. 3x minus 21 equals 10x. To solve for x, I have to get my x's together. Subtract 3x from both sides. Divide by 7. What's the answer? The answer is not negative 3. The answer is x equals negative 3. Now, you try problem number 2. Start with the excluded values. How did you do on problem number 2? questions on problem number 2? When you get down here to the end, please notice that negative 3 over 9 is not equal to 3. It's not equal to negative 3. The 9 on the bottom is bigger, and so it reduces to negative 1/3. Any questions? What are you going to do first on problem number 3? What do you do first? Nope. Before you do your excluded values, what do you do first? Factor. 25 is a perfect square number. What does this factor into? If you wrote it in the other order with the negative 5 first, does it make any difference? No. And so then our excluded values are going to be positive 5 and negative 5. Those will be our excluded values. So you've got 1 over x minus 5. I'm going to multiply by the first denominator. But what happens over here on this side? Does that cancel? Does it cancel on this side also? 2 for 1 deal. Canceled on both sides. And so then I have 1 equals x over x plus 5. Multiply both sides of the equation by x plus 5. Cancel, cancel. X plus 5 times 1, distribute the 1. That's pretty easy. Get your x's together so that you can solve. But what happens when I start trying to get my x's together? And so that cancels out and that cancels out. And so that's 5 equals x subtract x is 0. We had these kind of problems way earlier in the year. What does that mean, 5 equals 0? Is that possible? That is a false mathematical statement. That's not possible. So what does it mean? Somebody started to say it. Now, complete problem number 4. How did you do on homework problem number 4? Do you have any questions on homework problem number 4? Please go back to your note paper. On your salmon-colored note paper, would you please skip over to problem number 4? Problem number 4 on your note paper. We have a fraction equals a fraction plus a number. What do? We still need to get rid of the denominators. We still factor I need to do my excluded values. This 3, can that denominator ever equal 0? Can 3 equal 0? No. So this is where I get my excluded value. X cannot equal to 0. And the other one doesn't even have a denominator. So this is the only excluded value. This x right here can't be equal to 0 because I can't have a 0 in the denominator. Will the denominators factor? No. So let's get rid of them. What's the first denominator? 3. So I am going to multiply by 3. I am going to multiply everything by 3. I'm going to multiply 3 by every single term. When you multiply, because of order of operation, you have to multiply by every single term. So what's going to happen to this first 3? Cancel, cancel. So then we're going to have 10 equals 12 over x plus 6. I still have a denominator. I need to cancel the denominator. What is the denominator? So I'm going to multiply by x. I'm going to multiply everything by x. Got an x by every single term there? So that I can cancel, cancel. So then this is going to give me 10x equals 12 plus 6x. Hopefully from there it is very easy to solve. Subtract 6x from both sides to zero that out. Divide by 4. And x is equal to 3. And there is no extraneous answers. Now would you turn back to problem number 2? Problem number 2. How many solutions does it say you have for problem number 2? How do you get 2 solutions? Well, I'll show you in just a minute. But first of all, let's do the extraneous, not extraneous, the excluded answers first. Do the denominators factor? Denominators do not factor. Denominators cannot be equal to 0. Subtract 5 from both sides and divide by 2. Subtract 8 from both sides and divide by 11. This cannot be equal to 5 halves. X cannot be equal to negative 8 over 11. Those are the excluded values. Now that we have our excluded values, then I go back up to the equation. Since the denominators do not factor, I just go ahead and start multiplying both sides of the equation by the first denominator. What's going to happen to the first denominator? Well, the whole reason I multiply by that is so it will cancel. So on this side I have 1. Where did I get 2x squared plus 5x? Where did that come from? Now I need to multiply both sides of the equation by 11x plus 8 so that I can cancel the denominators. I want to see that on your paper. Some people just kind of do it in their head, but I can't grade what's in your head. I can only grade what's on your paper. So I want to see it on your paper. 1 distributed to 11x plus 8 is 11x plus 8. In this step right here, what do you see right there? X is squared. Right there in this step, x is squared. Did we have any x squareds in our previous examples and problems? No. This is going to be different because x is squared. If x is squared, what do you call it? How do you solve a quadratic? You solve a quadratic by factoring. If you're going to factor, it has to be equal to 0 before you factor. So I'm going to have to subtract these from both sides of the equation so that it will be equal to 0 so that I can factor it. I did not do this on the previous examples because x was not squared. Now, I'm not going to multiply the first number times the last number, find the factors of negative 16. That's the hard way. Do you see that they all divide by 2? 2, 6, and 8. So, what I am going to do is factor out a 2. Factor out a 2 and then continue factoring the part that's in parentheses. Now I'm going to multiply the first number times the last number. Oops, I made a sign mistake. Did you see my sign mistake? When I factor out a 2, does that change that to a positive 4? That's a negative 4. And so I multiply the first number times the last number and write down the factors of negative 4. And this is the pair that I want. X minus 4x plus 1. X minus 4 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. Solve both of those equations. Add 4 to both sides, x equals 4. Subtract 1 from both sides, x equals negative 1. Now do you see why it has 2 solutions? It has 2 solutions because in this step right here, when I distributed the x, it made an x squared. And so when you have an x squared, you have to solve by factoring. We're going to do the rest of the notes tomorrow.